Hello, thank you so much for tuning into our video on how to divide mentally and then use our dividing mentally strategies for estimating. We are going to start by writing out an equation, and we'll do 45 divided by 9 equals 5. The reason why I want to just start with a simple equation for now is so that we can start labeling the terms in our equation. So we have our 45 right here, which in our division equation is our dividend. And then we also have a 9 here, which that's what the number that we are dividing by. So that's going to be our divisor. And then we have our 5, which is the answer. Just like in multiplication, we have a product, which is the answer to our multiplication problem. When we're dividing, we also have an answer to our division problems. Those are going to be called our quotients. And you will need to know these vocabulary terms, so please make sure that you are labeling your equations and familiarizing yourself with this academic vocabulary. So our dividend is going to be the number that we are dividing. The divisor is going to be the number that we are dividing by, or how many groups we need. And then our quotient is going to be the answer. So this one is already set up in basic fact form for us. We should already know that 45 divided by 9 is 5 or equals 5. You can also label this with the word is, and we'll put that in quotation marks. So 45 divided by 9 is 5 because we know our basic facts of 5 times 9 is equal to 45. So when we're dividing mentally, we're going to be looking for our basic facts just a little bit backwards. When we take this and apply it to the larger numbers, since in 4th grade we go up to 4-digit dividends, that means that if we know that 45 divided by 9 equals 5, that 450 divided by 9 should equal something that's similar to this using our properties that we use for our multiplication as well. We looked at 45 divided by 9. That's the basic fact that we can pull out of that. So we know that 45 can be written as 45 tens divided by 9, which would be 5 tens. Since you're just pulling out the basic fact of 45 divided by 9, we know that that's going to be our 5, and then our tens just carries over. And then 5 tens is ultimately going to be equal to 50. So if we're looking at 450 divided by 9 as a whole, we know that that should be the number 50. And then a shortcut that we talked about with multiplication is that you can just look at the 45 divided by 9, put your 5 in, and then you can just count the zeros. So since there's 1 0 in our dividend, we can put 1 0 in our quotients so that they can be your place value holder to get you to where you need to be as far as where we started in our dividend when we pulled out our basic facts. We can keep going with that same example and look at 4,500 divided by 9. And that would be the same as saying 45 hundreds, since there's 2 zeros there, divided by 9. And we already know that 45 divided by 9 is 5, but we're really dividing 45 hundreds by 5, so it would be, or I'm sorry, by 9. So our answer would be 5 hundreds or 500 ones. So that's kind of like the pattern that we'll be looking at in using mental math to do our division. So if we are looking at our additional practice, which was the classwork portion of today, we did 5-1, and we were looking at just the odd numbers because the evens are going to be for homework. So I'm going to start making this key here, and we'll go over just a couple of these odd problems just for repetition and being quick. So if we're looking at number 1 here, our first odd number, we have 25 divided by 5. And if we know our basic facts, we'll just know that 5 times what gets us to our 25. So 25 divided by 5 is 5. And then when we're filling in our patterns, just to get us ready for our numbers down here when we're looking at 5 through 20, 250 divided by 5 is the same as saying 25 tens divided by 5. We already solved our 25 divided by 5 to get us to our 5. So we know that this 25 divided by this 5 is still going to be 5, but now we have this 0 that got us into our tens place for 250. And then we are going to pop that 0 on over here for our place value holder to get us back into that tens place. So 25 tens divided by 5 is 5 tens, which is equivalent to 50 ones. And you can still use that same pattern as you keep going down further and further with our numbers. So for 2,500 divided by 5, we would still use our basic fact of 25 divided by 5 to get us to 5, and then we have 2 zeros over here, so just pop those 2 zeros into your quotient. Okay, for number 3, we're starting off with another one of our basic facts. So we have 30 divided by 5, which we know that 5 times 6 will get us to 30. And you know what? If you're still having problems with your 5 multiples or your 6 multiples or any type of multiples, that's okay. Just make sure that you are practicing them daily, because if you're not, multiplication and division will be a struggle for you. But if you have these basic facts memorized, it will help you to where you will not need to spend a lot of time, since we're breaking all of our problems up essentially into basic facts. However, while we are dividing, I know we talked about this a little bit in class before for multiplying, so I wanted to bring it up for division too. If we're dividing something by 5, and we have a divisor of 5, you can go ahead and make a 5 tic-tac, and I'll be referring to these a lot when we get into doing partial quotients for our division. So set up a 5 here, and then make a tic-tac board. This will set you up with 9 different squares or little parts, little areas, and label it with the number 5 so that you know that this is going to be your 5 tic-tac. From there, start filling in your multiples of 5 until you fill each square with one multiple. So we'll have 5, 10, 15. That's the first 3 multiples of 5. 1, 2, 3. And then if you keep filling in your tic-tac, you'll have the next 3 as well. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So since we have our next 3, we know that the 6 multiple of 5 is 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gets us to 30. And then you can keep doing that so that you already have your first 9 multiples of 5 listed out for you. So if you ever have another problem that you need to know your 5 multiples for, you already have them listed out, so you don't have to do that thinking again. You've already done it, so write it down and then label it with your 5 so that if we have another problem, for example, number 15 is another one with a divisor of 5. We've already done our 5 tic-tac for number 3, so we can use that same tic-tac for number 15. You can just go and revert back to where you wrote it down since you have it labeled. And then there you go. You already have your first 9 multiples of 5 written out, ready to go. Since we did our tic-tac for 5, and we're trying to figure out 5 times what gets us to 30, then you can just look for 30, see that our 30 is written right here, and then count your multiples. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5 times 6 gets you to that 30. So we already have that written down, and then I'd say we're ready to go on to our next example down here, which is 300 divided by 5, or 30 tens divided by 5. We already decided that 30 divided by 5 is 6, and then we have our 1 0 place value holder that we need to put over into our quotient to get us to 60, or 6 tens to get us to 30 tens. And then keep going down with that same pattern. We still have your 30 divided by 5, which is 6, and then 1 2 zeros, 1 2 zeros. So 3,000 divided by 5 is 600. From there, we're not always going to be given the basic fact first, so it'll just be up to you for when we're going down to our next problem to be able to pull out the basic fact. So for number 5, we have 120 divided by 6. So if we look at these first 2 digits to our left, or our largest 2 place values, we have 12 there. So we should just be able to know off the top of our head that 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then we have our 1 0, or that 12 is in the tens place, so the 2 also needs to be in the tens place. So we'll put our 0 place value holder to get us back into that tens place. So 120 divided by 6 is 20. And then we can keep going. Example 7, we could just use 200, but we know that 20 divided by 4 is a basic fact because you can do 4 times 5 to get you to 20. So we'll write our 5, and then again with our 0 place value holder, we have 1 0 in the dividend, so we will put 1 0 in the quotient for your 0 place value holder. That, in a nutshell, is what we did for the lesson for using mental math to find our quotients or to divide. We also took a look at estimating quotients as well. So if you flip over onto additional practice 5-2, we can use compatible numbers in order to estimate. And then once we find compatible numbers, or look around for the closest basic fact that you can pull out of a problem, then you can use that mental math that we just did on the other side to be able to get an estimate so that we know if the quotients that we are solving for are reasonable or not. So if we're looking at 165 divided by 4, we're going to look at this 16 right here. And we're going to decide, can 4, our divisor, go into our dividend right now of 16? In this case, yes, it can, because 4 times 4 equals 16. So we like 16, everything to the right of 16. So this 5, we are going to put a 0. So it's similar to rounding, but you're looking specifically for numbers that will make these 2 digits be divisible by the divisor. So we like our 160 here. We're going to divide that by 4, and we will get 40 for our answer. So because 160, which is compatible with 4 but very close to 165, is 40, we know that 164 divided by 4 will be about 40. So close to, but not exactly. So if we get an answer that is close to 40, we'll know that that's a reasonable answer, or quotient in this case. For number 3, since remember we're only doing odds for the classwork and we'll be doing the evens for homework, we're going to skip over to number 3, and we have 715 divided by 9. So again, I will look at my 2 place values to the left and see if 71 is divisible by 9. Since I know my 9's times tables are my multiples of 9, I know that 71 cannot be divided by 9 evenly because 71 is not a multiple of 9. However, if I think real hard about my multiples of 9 and I just think what is the closest one to 71, I'm going to pick 72 because 9 times 7 equals 72. And again, if we don't know our 9's times tables very well, we can come back to this list that we've already started with Tic Tacs, and we can make a Tic Tac for the number 9. Keep it nice and organized so that you can refer back to it if you have another problem that has a divisor with 9, so you don't have to rethink of what your 9's multiples are. So you can start with 9 and then go to 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, and 81. There we go. We have our first 9 multiples of 9 all written out for us. So if we now look for 71, 71 goes right in between this 63 and this 72. Is it closer to 63 or is it closer to 72? Since it's closer to 72, that's going to be the compatible multiple that we will pick to use. So we'll change that 71 to a 72, and then that 5 we don't need, we're going to make that into a 0. So now we're ready to use our mental math strategies from 5-1 to solve 720 divided by 9. Since we used our 72, we know that 72 is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th multiple of 9. So 9 times 8 equals 72. So we'll have 8 and then we have our 0 that we will carry over to get us back into that tens place to account for our 5, or for our 72 in this case being in the tens place. So we know that 715 divided by 9 will be about 80. So again, for number 5, if we're looking for just a compatible number, that means that it can be divided evenly by 5. The closest one for 51 is going to be 50. Yes, you can pick 55 as well, but since 51 is closer to 50 than it is to 55, we would definitely want to go with 50 because it will get us a closer estimate. And then that 2, just like if you were rounding, would just become a 0 since it's to the right of the number that we rounded. So if we're doing 500 divided by 5, 5 divided by 5 is 1, and then we still have these 2 zeros. So our answer for 512 divided by 5, since 500 divided by 5 equals 100, 512 divided by 5 will be about 100. And the ultimate goal is to be able to get to do this part mentally as well. That way, you don't have to write this down. You can just have this to the right so that when we solve this using partial quotients, we'll be able to refer back to our estimate to make sure that our quotient is reasonable or not. So for our classwork, again, we just did the odd numbers, and then homework will be for even numbers for both the front and the back page. Don't forget to make your Tic Tacs to help you out with your multiples if you need help with those. Okay, and send me an email if you have any questions at this time. Thank you so much for tuning in.